Good morning, folks. We are waiting for one more board member to join us before we get started.
Daniel, if we don't have another board member soon, I don't think we should take the sheriff's time. I think we should just get started, and we can vote on stuff when we have a quorum. Yep.
I don't currently see her in the observer list, so
Okay,
we can go ahead and get started.
I think so. Yep. Thank you.
Alrighty. Give me just one moment to pull up the announcements. I can go ahead and make the announcements.
Sure.
And then we can go ahead and transition to Sheriff Diggins. So a couple of announcements. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the December 6th meeting of the Citizen Oversight Board. We have a few announcements before we get into the rest of the agenda. The first announcement is that board member Stephen Stein's term is ending January 1st, and he has chosen not to be considered for reappointment. He has offered very graciously to continue serving for a period of time beyond that while the mayor works to appoint his replacement. So this is not goodbye. This is just an announcement that any interested members of the community, there will be another seat for the mayor to fill. So if anyone knows someone who they think would be a good fit for the board, please encourage them to apply. There is more information on how to do that on the board's website. Number two is that given the nearness to the holidays, the next board meeting, December 20th, is being canceled. Number three is that moving forward in 2025, the board has elected to shift their meeting schedule from the first and third Fridays of each month to the second and fourth Fridays of each month. Hopefully that will transition well on the Zoom backend, and folks won't have to do a whole lot of re-signing up or anything like that. But that schedule will be shifting in 2025. And then also, the board has decided to create two committees. One committee will be focused on developing a community outreach plan. Its members at this point will include Karen, David, Larry, and Rufina. The second committee will take the lead on managing the performance of the board administrator and the independent monitor. And its members will include Julia, Tymisha, and Alfredo. We are still working on schedules for those committees and more details. But coming out of the strategic planning session that was created about 3 weeks ago, they are in the works. So with those announcements, Sheriff Diggins, I will hand things over to you if you would like to make any opening comments or statement, and then we have some questions that were sent in advance.
Thank you, Daniel. Good morning, board. It's my privilege to be with you all again. Let me start off by first thanking the men and women of the Denver Sheriff's Department for the work that they do every single day, 24 hours, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. They show up and enjoy serving the public as community servants. I want to make sure that I start off by thanking them for all that they do. We also want to thank the community that stands beside us, behind us, sometimes in front of us, and we certainly appreciate all the support that they give to us. I'll go ahead and jump right into our questions, starting with number one. Last month, community member Mrs. Holy Elkface asked us about the investigation into the in-custody death of her son, Waylon John. Is there anything related to that incident that is still on your to-do list? or has it been completely resolved from your perspective? Now, we extend our heartfelt condolences to Miss Holyoke Face and her family following the passing of her son. As you all may be aware of, this matter is in litigation. As such, I'm able to share any information or provide any comments related to the incident until the litigation is concluded. And I will pause there. Seeing no questions or comments, I'll move on to the next question. Number 2, what is the latest information on overdose rates in the jail? We don't characterize incidents as overdoses in our facilities because to do so would require a toxicology exam on people following medical incidents. We do, however, deploy naloxone, otherwise known as Narcan, in episodes where medical intervention is required for people in custody who appear to have perhaps ingested narcotics or may be unconscious and in medical distress. This may be because of another medical condition, such as a heart attack, a seizure, high blood pressure, etc. But we deploy Narcan in these instances as a precaution. At the beginning of 2024, we began to see an increase in these episodes, and in May 2024, we saw a peak of 17 separate events happen in our facilities. Following this, we took proactive steps to address this problem by increasing our searches with staff specifically assigned to this task, requiring and regulating body scanner searches, additional deployment of our narcotic detecting canine teams, more scrutiny of incoming mail, and increased partnership with the Denver Police Department fentanyl investigation team. In addition to partnering with DPD, we also created a task force that includes the District Attorney's Office, the Denver Crime Lab, the Office of the Independent Monitor, and federal agencies to help us combat introduction of contraband issues. Since that peak time in May, we have seen a decrease in the number of episodes with an average of about 1 to 2 per week now. In like jails and prisons across the nation, we continue to fight this problem robustly, and we will continue to do so. I'll pause there for questions.
Sheriff
ma'am.
Diggins, do you attribute then what I perceive to be a reduction to the measures you've taken, or is there any other factor?
We believe the proactive steps that we have taken have helped us to reduce the episodes, and we'll continue to do so and figure out more creative ways to address the issue. But we absolutely believe that all the things that we are doing have been helpful.
What other measures do you think would be appropriate?
We're looking at changing the way that mail comes into the jail and working with our vendor through the current contracting process, which I'll talk about at the end of my time with you all, to scan mail as it's coming in rather than letting the mail come in the way that it is today. And that's one of the things that other jails and prisons across America have moved to that has been very helpful. That and other things that perhaps we can't talk about on this call.
Thank you.
Question.
Morning, Karen.
Hey, regarding the inclusion of staff for your search, does that include the sheriff's rank and file?
It is. It's actually when we deployed more staff who are specifically tasked with doing searches. It's a part of our emergency response unit. There are tactical teams similar to DPD SWAT team. They have a higher level of training, and they go through the facilities and random areas and perform searches every day. And so we've deployed a small group of them to do that. And we believe that's also been very helpful with them doing those random searches in different pods at the different facilities to help to reduce the number of incidents.
Okay.
Sheriff, I think you, good morning, by the way, Sheriff.
Morning, sir.
I think you indicated that, because of the urgency of the matter, you're not able to determine whether somebody's actually suffered an overdose before you administer Narcan in a particular situation. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think in prior discussions with you, you've said that it's your understanding, and neither of us is a doctor, but that if you administer Narcan to somebody who wasn't experiencing an overdose, that wouldn't have any collateral consequences for them if they were experiencing some other medical condition. Is that correct?
That's correct. And we have been told that by medical professionals. The folks that work with us through Denver Health have shared that information with us. And across the nation, I know in the conversations that I have, that is best practice in jails and prisons across the country. And for some police departments and sheriff's departments on the street, they do the same thing. Narcan or naloxone does not have an adverse effect on someone who is not in overdose.
All right. Thank you for that.
Okay, seeing no other questions, I'll move on to question number 3. Since the start of the year, the average population of Denver's jails has grown from roughly 1,600 to 1,900. Do you know why there are hundreds more people in custody now? Well, the seasonality of arrests is something that we recognize and that we see each year. In warmer months, there are more people out and about and active, which tends to mean that more people are coming into custody. We see this every single year, and that's seen in jails across the nation. If you view the trends of the rise and fall of our population, you will be able to see this trend year over year. Pardon me. Although we are averaging 1,755 people in custody in 2024, at the peak of about 1,855, we are well below where we were in previous years. For instance, in 2013, we had an average daily population of 2,284 people. 2014, 2,064. 2016, we had an average daily population of 2,238. In 2017, it was 2,187. And in 2019, it was 1,896. Although there is definitely more work to be done, we are thankful for the participation of the Crime Prevention and Control Commission members, who I believe have worked very hard to help us to keep where we are today. The good work of the many partners that are involved have kept us from seeing counts as high as they were in the past and has helped us to keep our numbers more manageable. I'll pause there for questions.
Does your do your numbers also reflect what is happening? In other words, if there seems to be a pattern to the year of various incidents or events that help, I shouldn't say help, that contribute to the numbers being put into detention, is there a way that that information then helps to either prepare other members of the community, or I guess I'm struggling because I'm obviously not a police expert, but certainly is there a way to anticipate and thus prepare, or is there anything to that?
Thank you for the question, Ms. Hernandez. I think it's more so about knowing that when things are colder, you tend to not see the police department called out for more arrests out in the community because things aren't happening as much. There aren't events happening down in Lodo, or the bars probably aren't as filled during those times. It's all of us are out and about. We love Colorado. It's why we live here. And when the weather begins to get warmer, I love going to jazz festivals or going to the park. And so you always see more people out and about. And of course, we have the fact that it gets dark in Colorado at about 5:30 this time of the year. So people tend to want to be home and not out and about as well. So I think that's the seasonality of things kind of slowing down that we see in the jail trends for our population. And in March, April, May, when it begins to warm up, we begin to see our count begin to increase. And we see that trend every single year. Historically, that's what we've seen in our jail population.
Let me give you a sort of an analogy. I used to do domestic violence work, and we were always worried after a Denver Bronco loss that we would see an increase in our caseload. And so we would, sort of brace ourselves, depending on how bad that loss was, and how important the game was. And so we would anticipate and thus sort of staff up a little bit more than typical. Is there anything to that with the sheriff's department?
No, ma'am, our staffing is pretty static. During
Okay.
those times where things slow down, it does give us a little more room to catch up on paperwork, to work on cleanliness, to focus on accreditation standards, things of that nature. So we really don't change our staffing. It stays very static throughout the year.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, seeing no other questions, I'll move on to question 4. The 2025 operating agreement with Denver Health changes language about the city's access to medical records of individuals treated in Denver's jails. Has Denver Health ever denied you access to those medical records? Denver Health has never denied me access to any medical records. To the contrary, they've been very responsive to my request, and the language changes were made after discussions with us in Denver Health regarding ensuring parties on both sides are compliant with HIPAA regulations. We believe the language in the 2025 operating agreement achieves that. We also have agreed upon a documented form when requests are made from our side that will indicate the reason why the records were needed. I'll pause there for questions. And bless you, Mr. Hernandez. I saw you sneeze. If seeing no questions, I'll move on to number 5. In October, Denver Health publicly stated that they are considering the possibility of declining to provide healthcare services at Denver jails as soon as 2026. Changing healthcare providers is a major undertaking. If Denver Health decides to move in that direction, what would that process look like for you? Sub questions: given the budget negotiation schedule, how likely is it that you would have sufficient time to make a relatively smooth transition to a new provider? Do you know if the passage of Denver Health's funding referendum changes the likelihood of them continuing to work with DSD? Denver Health did share that information in their description of one of the reasons that ballot measure 2Q was needed. And should it not have passed, ideas were shared by them about discussing how they were to remain solvent. I personally spoke to Denver Health CEO Donna Lynn about this very issue, and I certainly understood her viewpoint. She shared that if 2Q passed, things will look much better for them financially, and we would not need to discuss this further. I anticipate that continuing to be the case. We are very fortunate to have the city's healthcare provider, local hospital for folks that perhaps don't have medical care be Denver Health, and that we partner with them. And as we look towards the future, we believe that that continued partnership is in the best interest of the people that are in custody. So we'll continue to have those discussions about how to make that business relationship stronger, and I don't believe that there would be a need for us to explore the separation from Denver Health. I'll pause there for questions. Okay, seeing none, I'll move on to number 6. Can you please provide an update on the status and timeline for implementing an electronic health record system? I can. The overall project status today is green. The schedule is green. And when I say green, I mean this in a stoplight example. Red being we're not moving ahead. Yellow, we're moving ahead with caution. Green meaning that we're moving ahead in a good way. So the overall schedule, the budget, the scope, and the resources are all currently in the green lane. We also have a resolution that's going before City Council next Monday approving a proposed agreement between the City and County of Denver and NAFCare Incorporated for implementation, licensing, and ongoing support of our electronic health record software system. Before, I was unable to share with you who the vendor was. Now that that is public information, I can tell you that we've been in negotiations with them, and we believe that they will be able to support our electronic health record requirements. The agreement is a contract with NAFCare for $1.8 million for a 5-year and 9-month term of implementation, licensing, and ongoing support. And it will, the last regularly scheduled council meeting within the 30-day review period is December 23rd. If the committee approves that going forward, we are tentatively eyeing a potential January 2025 kickoff meeting with them and look forward to that as well. I'll pause for questions.
Did you say January 2025, Sheriff, kickoff date?
That's correct.
Next month, okay.
Yes, if City Council approves this, then next month we'll begin the discussions about the project implementation. So we're very excited about that. You know that this is going to help us with the continuity of care from the folks that are coming from the streets into our facilities and back into the community to help them to have better health care outcomes.
And you've probably mentioned this before, but I don't recall it. What is the timeline for the final transition to be made? Is that a 1-2 year? What is the time frame?
I believe it should be done within 2025. As you can imagine, we're currently on all paper records for everyone that is currently in our custody, as well as the folks that have been through our custody. This year, we are on track to book about 23,000 people into our custody. And so transitioning from a paper system to an electronic system, as well as scanning all of those documents, getting them stood up, is an arduous process. In January, we'll begin to do that. And we have a project manager and folks who are a lot more smarter than me when it comes to technology implementing this, but we anticipate that we should be rolling by the end of the year.
Thank you.
All right. No other questions on number 6. I'll move to number 7. Over the summer, the Federal Communications Commission issued new rules for jails around phone call costs. Is Denver prepared to be compliant with those rules when they take effect in 2025? Sub questions: what will the new cost of a phone call be? And what will be the new cost of a video call? We've actually been involved and engaged with the issue of the cost of phone and video calls since it became an issue in 2012. And in fact, in 2014, I testified before the FCC about this very topic. Since then, we have stayed prepared for the eventual rulemaking around this issue, and we're currently in discussions with our provider to ensure that we're meeting the terms of the Martha Wright Reed Act. That's the official act that sets the guardrails for phone calls, video calls, and the like for all of the things that we provide to the folks there in our custody. As those discussions are currently underway, we cannot share what the cost of the phone calls or video calls will be, but I assure personally that they will be as low as possible, and they will be just, reasonable, and fair to the people in custody, as well as their family members. And I just want to take a moment of personal privilege to share with you all. You all know that I'm the son of a formerly incarcerated person. My father passed away on July 7th of this year, and throughout my childhood, he was someone who, in fact, was in the jail that I'm now the sheriff of on Smith Road. I recall when I was a kid, when he would call home, how expensive those calls were, and when my mother would tell us that we can't take his phone calls anymore because she was taking care of us financially and she had to choose between putting food on the table and taking my dad's phone calls. That never left me. The cost of those phone calls and the impact that it had to my family never left me, which is why we always ensure that those phone call costs, those video call costs from the Denver Sheriff's Department are as low as they possibly can be. So I assure you that when the new rates are set, that they will be in that same space. I'll now pause and take questions.
Sure, thank you for sharing my personal story.
Thanks, Steph.
Sheriff Diggins, so how is the cost determined? Is this due to the third-party vendor dictating certain costs? Is the jail receiving any funds from that? How does that work?
It is through a vendor because of the many things that go into not just the phone calls, but also the technology that's on the back end, the staff that it takes to monitor the phone calls, the infrastructure that it takes. We have a very robust formula that we work with the provider to determine the cost of the calls. The city does receive funds back, but those are minimal, and they're primarily to ensure that the system stays robust from the things that we're responsible for, the wiring, the cabling, things of that nature. But I can tell you that we don't receive costs that are extraordinary. We ensure that they're as low as possible and that they're just, reasonable, and fair to everyone involved, to include the provider, to include the city, but most importantly, to the people that are in custody and their families as well.
Okay, thank you.
Sheriff, are the video calls made through the iPads that are now made available to incarcerated persons?
Not yet. We currently have video calls on the kiosks on the wall. I believe you may have seen them when we did.
I've seen that. Yeah.
Yeah. So the video calls are made from those wall units, but the phone calls that they made can be made from the tablets that everyone is issued once they go to long-term housing.
You anticipate that at some point that a video call will be able to be made through an inmate's personal iPad?
We certainly hope that that technology comes to fruition. I anticipate that it will in the next couple of years. It's just like you and I using FaceTime. I believe that that technology on those tablets will be coming very, very soon.
So that would certainly be a lot more efficient. Yeah. And
Agreed.
satisfying to people in custody.
Agreed. And it would help us because currently they have to wait for those wall units to become available to make those video calls. And as I shared before, the transition for us to providing phone calls on tablets doubled the number of calls that folks were able to make exponentially. It will be the same thing for those video calls. We'll be able to allow them even more contact with their families, which for us, that's critical to their reentry, is to keep those connections and to keep those bonds.
Are the lines typically pretty long to make those video calls where people are waiting quite a bit to do that?
Not typically, because if someone can't make a video call, they'll just make a phone call on their tablet and just wait their turn. And a lot of the times folks aren't home or they're not in a place where they can make the video call, so they're scheduled as well.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. That is the end of the questions that were sent to me. I will stand for any additional questions that you may have.
Sheriff, are there any issues, I mean, that aren't the subject of the questions that we posed to you that, that you think are important issues that are facing both the Sheriff's Department, people in custody and the community that, have recently come to your attention that you feel you can share with us?
I would say for our department, we are still looking to fill our ranks with good people from the community. Our recruitment numbers have gone up. We now have a lot more people who are eligible for retirement. The folks that started 30 years ago, like I did, are now becoming eligible for retirement. And so figuring out how to balance the attrition that we have with the recruitment is very important to us, along with our safety and security. For the people that are in custody, just continuing to encourage people to provide opportunities for people who are justice involved is something that we all should do, because that also helps to reduce recidivism and to advocate for more services for them in the community. One thing that I do want to talk about is there has been a larger concerted effort on deflection and diversion. And I think the work that's being done in that space is something that will be very helpful as well. Not everyone needs to come to jail. And so the programs related to deflection and diversion are something that I would encourage you all to support, but also continuing to support people of the Denver Sheriff's Department who do this work, both the sworn staff and the professional staff. Just lets them know that what they do is important. Other than that, I just thank the community for their unwavering support of the Denver Sheriff's Department. This is the time of year where they get to see us a lot more. We've been out and about doing Thanksgiving food drives. Today, we have the Hiawatha Davis Luncheon, which we love to do. I'm not sure if you all know what that is. Councilwoman Lewis and others are sponsoring a luncheon in the community, and seniors who will be attending will be served their meals by members of the Denver Sheriff's Department, the Denver Police Department, and the Denver Fire Department. And it is always so much fun. In the next couple of weeks, we'll be doing Christmas toy drives and just showing the community how much we love and support them and appreciate them as well. So just a very good time of the year. 2024 had its challenges, but I think it overall was a good year for us. We're looking forward to 2025.
That's great. I had two other things, if I might.
Sure.
Number one, you just mentioned deflection and diversion and the success that has had in reducing the jail population. Have you, in that regard, since the DA's office is so involved in those issues, have you had an opportunity to meet with the DA-elect John Walsh and discuss, any variety of issues that that concern law enforcement, the Sheriff's Department in particular? And then I have a very different question. You had mentioned before about the fact that that in-person visitations had been rather low. Maybe that was a couple of meetings ago that we had with you. Have those visitations increased? So two separate subjects.
All right. Thank you for those, Stephen. Let me answer the first question. I have met with John Walsh. Not only have I met with John Walsh, but when he was on the campaign trail, we were at many of the same events. So I got to talk to him and know him since he's been elected. We have been invited to a panel or two together. And so I've had a chance to talk to him. He came to my office and talked about his vision and asked what he could do to continue to help the Sheriff's Department. I anticipate that he's going to be a great partner, the same way that Beth McCann has in helping to do some of those very innovative programs that we've seen over the last couple of years for diversion and deflection. He's also met with Chief Thomas and Director Salvalte as well to begin to get ready to do the work that he's called to do in January. So looking forward to working with John Walsh as the district attorney. For the in-person visitation, I don't have those numbers currently. I did change the leadership of that program so that I could so that we could see more robust use of it. And I can certainly get those numbers and send them to you all, or we can talk about them in my first quarter meeting of 2025.
Yeah, that'd be great. I mean, if you want to forward it to our administrator, to Daniel, that'd be great. We can also talk about it first quarter. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Were there any other questions? For Sheriff Diggins? Okay. What we would do is we'll go on to the announcements. I don't know if they were made, but Stefan will be.
I did make those announcements, Tamisha.
Okay, perfect. Okay, thank you. And we need to approve the minutes for November 1st and 16th.
Well, I think first we could let Sheriff Diggins go if there's no further questions for him.
That's good.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Good seeing you all. I'm getting ready to go and serve those lunches and have some fun with the community. So thank you all. Happy holidays. Happy New Year. I'll see you all first quarter, Lord willing.
Sure. Happy New Year to you too. Thank you.
Have a great day. Have
You too.
fun. So before we invite our guest speaker, just wanted to go ahead and approve the minutes for November 1st and 16th. Do I have a motion from the floor?
So moved. Second.
It's been moved a second for the approval of the minutes for November 1st and 16th. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So it has been moved and approved that the minutes for November 1st and 16th have been approved. Okay, so we have a guest speaker today, Reagan Benson. She has a comment that she would like to present to the COB. So I'd like to just invite her to go ahead and take the floor.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Okay, good morning. How are you doing today?
Good, thank you. So yes, thank you very much for allowing me this opportunity to provide you with some public comment from a citizen myself that utilizes the OIM process on a regular basis. I want to thank you all for your work. It's exceptionally important to all citizens. I have some very serious concerns around proper response for getting resolutions to complaints. I want to provide just a few examples today, and I don't know how much time you're going to give me, but I'll try to keep this at about 5 minutes. And if I need to be cut off, please just let me know and I'll come back. So most importantly, I think I understand this process fairly well. I utilize it quite a bit, appropriately. My complaints are not egregious. They're not an abuse of this system. They're used with good intention to get results and answers for myself when I have bad experiences with law enforcement, primarily the Denver Police Department, making false arrests of me and me ending up in the Denver jail, which ultimately produces other complaints. And if Denver would quit doing that to me, I wouldn't end up in Denver's jail and in this administrative investigative unit process where complaints are not being responded to. So I've got jail complaints that are 1.5 years old and older, that are lost. I got a phone call about a month ago. I don't have the exact date, from an investigator from the Administrative Investigation Unit that was investigating a complaint from June of 2023. June of 2023. And he wanted to interview me on that. Well, I couldn't even remember exactly what the complaint was about. Well, still don't have a resolution to that complaint. Still don't have an answer to where all my other jail complaints are, which are at least 2 more. We've got a response that I shared with the board from the Department of Safety just flat out refusing to do an investigation of a commander, or I'm sorry, not a commander, a chief in DPD. So I know some of these things can't be talked about publicly, but who's going to start talking with the community publicly? Here's another one. I've got a letter here from a DPD investigation that doesn't even reflect what was done in the investigation. I had conversations on the phone with DPD IA, and none of that is reflected in this disposition letter. And at the bottom of it, it says, if you have further questions or concerns, please feel free to contact the Office of the Independent Monitor. So I do. I don't get a response from the monitor's office because they can't respond to the investigation that DPD did. Shouldn't DPD be responding to this investigation? So this sits in limbo. This is a very serious complaint. This has to do with DPD retaliation on me that will not stop. I literally have to stay out of Denver now. In the community I live in, I can't be out on the streets doing my nonprofit work to help the homeless because this agency wants nothing more than to target me. And I can't even file a complaint to get at least some semblance of a resolution. So I read your charter, and it does say in there that I have the option to start filing my complaints with the COB itself, with the board itself. I am going to start doing that because it is your work that's supposed to support the monitor in the ability for the community to get resolution in complaints and even get responses to complaints. I'm the complainant and I'm kept in the dark because of charter and whatever else the monitor can't talk to the community about. And I feel pretty informed in the process, but I don't. And this is why nobody else utilizes the process that should, because it's not serving the community. So I'm going to stop at that because I can go on forever. And the more I talk, the more fired up I get over this because I'm passionate about your work. I'm passionate about this good thing that Denver has in civilian oversight. Thank you. Any questions?
I don't know about questions. Ms. Benson, good to see you. I just want to thank you for bringing this to the attention of the COB and to us. I appreciate your commitment to oversight and the work that you do to support oversight in the community and to make sure that the process works appropriately. I continue to look into your complaints and do, we are doing what we can. We only can do, since we don't do the investigations, unfortunately, we can only do so much. But please know that your concerns, I take your concerns very seriously, and I do continue to work on that.
Okay, thank you.
If indeed, thank you so much, Ms. Benson. I appreciate your coming forward. And I know it takes a lot of energy and perseverance to see something like this through. So I appreciate what your struggle has been. If that indeed is an option to bring these complaints forward to us directly, I think that that's something that you need to go ahead and do, and then we will take it upon ourselves then at that point to address the matter since we're given that responsibility. So I look forward to hearing from you.
If I might, just a point of clarification there. The COB is is able to take complaints. That is absolutely something that can be done. The COB is not an investigative. We would not then conduct the investigations. We would then have to refer the complaints, but we could then, continue to monitor their status and things like that. But by filing a complaint with the COB, I just want to make sure it's clear, Ms. Benson, I'm sure you're aware, but for others on the call, because it is a very complicated process, I don't want to give the impression that the COB would be the ones conducting the investigations of those complaints.
I was gonna say something very similar, Ms. Benson. Again, thank you for coming to speak with us today. I mean, in essence, yes, we are an outlet for you and others in the community to raise complaints with, but we're in essence we're in a facilitator role, I would say. I mean, when we get those complaints, we have to rely on the OIM and the law enforcement agencies to provide the information in order to respond to your complaints, because we do not have subpoena or other investigatory authority. But we will play the role that I think Daniel and I have just described.
May I provide one more, a little bit of feedback? If you are not in a position to investigate, I would think that completed investigations should be able to be talked about publicly. And so I think that too is my goal, to hear more from the board with some more of the important questions of our Department of Safety leaders when it comes to these incomplete dispositions. Is that reasonable?
I'm going to have to defer to the board members who have been on this longer. But I would say that if you're bringing something to our attention and then we're seeking the information from others, hopefully there'd be some response to us. If not, then that's a problem as well. So, I don't know enough. I'm a new board member, Ms. Benson, so there is still some gaps in my knowledge about how things proceed, but understanding your frustration and having that option to bring it to our attention, I think is an appropriate step.
I would agree. I'm more of a longtime board member, Ms. Benson. I think, if you bring those complaints or concerns to us, and then we will then seek information in order to respond to that. We'll certainly communicate all of that back to you in terms of the information that we get. Daniel, do you support that?
Yeah, I think in terms of public discussion of completed cases, there is certainly some degree of that does happen. We have discussed, even in our annual reports, certain completed cases and the board's frustrations with them. Those typically are cases that are, brought by community members to the board, that the community members are okay with being discussed publicly. I think the board has some hesitation to just, picking some random person's complaints and publicizing it if they would rather keep it private. And so, it always certainly helps to have a community member come forward and say, could you please use my complaint as an example? I'm very frustrated. Or I'm frustrated, and then we can follow up and say, can we use are you okay with this being, addressed in a more public manner? But it certainly is possible. There would be, components of that would still be confidential. Various recommendations that are made internally would likely not be disclosed, to the extent that we can potentially even facilitate a records request to get those completed documents public, and then we can publicly discuss the public documents. I think there are ways around. What I'm trying to say is there are ways where we can have a substantive conversation about closed investigations. And happy to have, more conversations about the details of how that might work, you know, at a future date.
Well, I think there's sort of two aspects to this, I think, Ms. Benson. Number one, I think what you're expressing is some frustration about getting responses to your own complaints. And I think the bottom line, I think, is when you convey those complaints or concerns to us, and then we then attempt to get information to be responsive to you, we can certainly provide the information that we get to you. Which I would think is the most important thing, right? You're looking for, information that's responsive to your complaints and concerns. There may be a little bit of a complication, but I get in terms of making whatever those responses are public to the entire community, but we can try to work those through with you and with law enforcement in terms of what can be disclosed. But I would think that the first thing is, it appeared to me by listening to you, is the most important thing to you in terms of getting a satisfactory response to your complaints and concerns.
Thank you. Yes, very much.
Okay.
Thank you all very much for your time. I appreciate your work very
Thank you.
much. And we'll see you soon.
Thank you for bringing it to our attention, and we'll continue to monitor, and we'll get back to you.
We'll be talking to you.
Definitely.
Sorry for the frustration. Thank you.
Thanks. Do we have any other meeting for the community, or would you like to transition to executive session?
We have two quick items of board business that I wanted to mention. We don't necessarily have to spend time discussing them. The first one is that as it relates to our strategic plan, upcoming strategic plan that we've been working on, we hope to get a draft of that document from our facilitator by this coming Monday, the 9th. So please be on the lookout for that in your email inboxes. Given the cancellation of our December 20th board meeting, the next scheduled board meeting is January 10th. In an ideal world, I think it would be, I chatted with Julie about this. In an ideal world, it would be nice to have maybe an hour of a virtual meeting just to go over the draft that we've received and get board member feedback and any updates on that. So I will be sending out a doodle poll in an email here this afternoon. So please take some time to fill that out, and just so we can see if there is an alternative time where we can review that, get some initial feedback on that draft before our planned publication of that, or before we share that with the public for their feedback. So that's item number one. I just wanted to make you aware of. Item number two, Rufina, I don't know if you want to chime in more about this, but if the board wants to, we can chat about 2025 schedule. Rufina, you had highlighted a suggestion about meeting in person more often. As I think currently we have, the in-person planning meeting each quarter that's scheduled. You had also suggested meeting with safety leaders in person at least once a quarter. I don't know if you wanted to share that with the board now, or we don't necessarily. I just want to get that on folks' radar, even if we don't have a full discussion about that today.
Yeah, so my suggestion basically is that there's a lot of opportunity, as I experienced when we got together for the strategic planning committee discussion, a lot of opportunity to have conversations with each other that obviously during a Zoom call are pretty limited. And two purposes for that. One is to get to know each other better, but the other piece is that some parts of our business are facilitated with those conversations that we're able to have, because what I'm observing is that when we get on our Zoom meetings, it's all about the agenda, but it isn't taking care of other aspects that we might want to have conversations about. And so I thought that if we could at least have 1 a quarter of our conversations with the safety leaders, that might promote some of that kind of, first of all, them getting to know us, but also taking care of some questions far easier than just in the Zoom calls. So that was the purpose. And I think it also facilitates the community coming in and talking with us as well. So, and some of you heard this before in the in the strategic planning discussion. So,
Is that something that we would need to vote on, Daniel, to have more meetings in person? And that's different than our quarterly meetings that we're supposed to have now.
Typically, the board chair is sort of responsible for setting for scheduling matters. So we don't necessarily have to decide the specific dates and people right now, but if that's all, we can also sort of, I wanted to get that on, make sure that was on folks' radars. We can have a more detailed conversation about the specifics in our in-person meeting on the 10th, potentially, if we want to implement that on how exactly we want to implement that, and whether we want to, you know, if we're having in-person meetings, do we want to have them, you know, here downtown at the city building? Do we want to have those in the community more? Do we want them to be during the day, during the evening? I think there's some follow-up questions there that we can discuss if we want to move forward with that. And so we don't necessarily have to do that right now.
That's good. Yeah, so we can go ahead and, so we take a note to have an action item to discuss that in the January 10th.
Sure.
Thank you.
so on the January 10th meeting, then are we meeting in downtown at 10 o'clock? What is the thought about that?
That is currently the plan. Yeah.
Okay. Okey-doke.
I like the idea. I think a lot could come out of doing more in person.
And since
Daniel,
I'm
have
on
you-
the, oh, sorry, go ahead, Stefan.
Oh, no problem. I was just looking at my calendar. Have the calendar invites for the 2025 meetings gone out yet? I don't think they have, Daniel, right?
They will be going out this afternoon.
Oh, okay, good. Very timely.
I was scared to do it before this because it would reset, because we're switching to the second and fourth Fridays.
Yeah, right.
It'll reset all future meetings to that as well. So I was like, I'm gonna wait until this afternoon and then resend them out. You will so you will be getting emails from Zoom notifying you that the meetings have been extended and potentially the dates changed. You will then need to go ahead and click to add that to your own digital calendar. It won't do that automatically. Yeah, I'll circle back and make sure that you have all the information you need for that.
So it's basically just accepting invitations, isn't that right?
It should be. It should be pretty
Okay.
seamless.
Okay.
But you know, it isn't always.
No, I understand. And we can all reach out to you. You're very helpful if we have an issue. So well, to Rafina's question, I mean, the January 10th meeting then, I mean, there'll be Zoom meetings throughout 2025 that people can accept on their calendars, but will there be any kind of notation with respect to at least the January 10th meeting that will be in person, or you'll just send an email reminding people to that effect?
Happy to do it however you would like. I think what I would probably end up doing is canceling the Zoom webinar version of the meeting with a note that says this meeting will be conducted in person at this location.
Okay, I think that'd be helpful because a lot of us, me in particular, I just look at my calendar, and if I'm used to just doing Zoom calls, I might not pick that up. So if we really want to emphasize that people ought to be there in person on January 10th, that'd be great to call that out. Thank you.
And if you would like a specific calendar invite hold for the in-person event, you know, maybe a little 15 minutes early, 15 minutes after kind of thing.
Color-coded red.
Not yet.
Color-coded red.
Or maybe green, not yellow. I don't know.
Okay, yeah,
All right, yeah, sure, whatever works so that we can all be there in person on the 10th. Yes, that'd be good. Okay. Thank you, Rufina.
you're welcome.
Do we have any other discussion on the in-person meeting? I just want to do a quick go back regarding Mrs. Benson's complaint. So I had text Danielle to ask if we could do an ongoing monitoring of the open complaints, not necessarily do any investigation, but perhaps just monitor to see when they close out so that we can communicate better with her. Maybe that would ease her, give her a little bit of relief from her frustrations, right? Because she's feeling like she's not being communicated with. How does the board feel about that?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Keep it on the radar.
Yeah,
Keep it relevant and us talking about it, checking in.
And how do you feel about that, Liz?
No problem with that at all. In fact, I can fill you in more in executive session.
So, if we don't have anything else for the public session, I would like to entertain a motion to go to executive session.
so moved to adjourn and to go to executive session.
Second,
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Sounds like we will see you in executive session shortly. Thank you.
You, everybody.